You know, when people read history, they often look back at horrible things that happened. Let's use the Holocaust for an example and say, oh my God, how could that have ever happened? Never again. If I lived in Nazi Germany or any of the Nazi-occupied territories, I would have never allowed the Nazis to take over and to allow Jews to be led to the slaughter and all the other groups that were victimized by the Nazi regime. But I want to propose something. There was an interesting clip that I ran across from Dr. Jordan Peterson that entertained some of the same thoughts that I had thought during the whole COVID-19 pandemic. And I want to pose a few questions to you guys. But first, before I do that, I want to play the clip because I believe that how you acted or reacted to the COVID-19 pandemic would be a good litmus test for how you would react in a more extreme situation. Take a listen to this and then we'll talk about it.
When people read the history of Nazi Germany, they always think they're Schindler. They always think that they're the person who would have saved Anne Frank in the Netherlands. They never read history as a perpetrator. I wouldn't have done that. It's like, did you watch people during the pandemic? In Canada, 30% of my neighbors were thrilled that they had the opportunity to inform on the people around them. Thrilled. They would have worn those goddamn masks for the rest of their life if the payoff would have been they could feel morally superior and informed. When people read the history...
I think Dr. Jordan Peterson brought up some good points. And as a student of history myself, I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that during the pandemic, those same thoughts entered my mind. It was not COVID that was the problem, but government's response to COVID. Governments all around the world. When we saw mass lockdowns, people trying to force people to get a jab. Now, I don't care if you did or if you didn't, but I believe in a free society where people should be allowed to make decisions based on what goes in their body and what does not. As a Christian, I believe your body is your temple. And with that being said, it is your responsibility to take care of it the best way you know how. That means you have the free will to decide what to put in it and what not. But you have a responsibility to take care of yourself. And if you don't trust something, you should be allowed to have that ability to discriminate and have discernment. But what did we see? We saw governments, this government included, and the allies of the big government in the media trying to force people to take the jab. That I have a problem with. If the jab was so good, why were you trying to deny people the right to work, people the right to worship their God, to see their own family, to go do things that make them healthy, like going to the gym? Why were you trying to force it on people? Do you not believe that if people were left to their own devices, that they would ultimately make the best decision for themselves? And if it was so good, my friends, if the jab was so good and so effective at doing its job of being preventative, then why did government feel the need to try to force people, to coerce them into taking the jab? Now, again, I say to you, if you chose to do that, I don't have anything against you. But I do have something against the people who responded in a way that if they chose to take the jab, which they're perfectly within their bounds to do so as a human being. But if they chose to take it, how did you treat your neighbor who chose not to? Did you try to dehumanize him? Did you try to treat him as if he was a second-class citizen? This, my friends, is the litmus test. How did you react when government said we must shut things down? When government said you must wear a mask? You're not free to not wear a mask if you go into public spaces. How did you react to government mandates, which tried to force people to take the vaccine to keep their own jobs? This public-private partnership into forcing people to take something and put something in their body, or deprive them the very ability to be able to provide for their families, that's fascistic tyranny. And I want to tell you, I don't care if it makes you mad or not. If you supported that, you would not have been the kind of person that would have hid Jews during the Nazi regime. You would have been the kind of person that would have snitched on your neighbor. You would have been the kind of person that would turn your own neighbor into the SS to save your own skin. You're not on the right side of history. And I believe, my friends, that Dr. Peterson was onto something. How you responded to the pandemic is a litmus test, because I believe that this was a litmus test to see how far the American people in particular, which have historically been very anti-big government and very rough and rowdy when it comes to our expression of freedom, I think that they were trying to test things to see how far they could push it, to see who was willing to go along to get along and who was willing to have a backbone. Again, I don't care what you did in your personal life, if you decided to take a jab or not. But if you were for mandates, trying to force people to do things, you're not on the right side. Good ideas do not require force. And if your ideas require force, I suggest that you re-examine them, because it is bad ideas that require that somebody be forced by the point of a gun. And that's ultimately what law is. Because what happens if you break the law? People with guns will come throw you into a cage. And if your ideas require that to enforce them, they're not good ideas. Just some food for thought today. Think about it. Let it marinate in your mind. If it pisses you off, I'm glad, because perhaps that is the first step to waking up. I'll see you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help me get this message out. I want to make people think and to wake them up, because that's how a revolution is started.